First thing you want to get your hands on is some floral wire. You can also use some garden wire as well. And then you want to get your hands on a jar. Now I'm going to be using a jar which has a little grip on the top, and this is what we're going to build the whole structure on top of. I'm going to take the first piece of wire, wrap that around the base, and you want to twist the edges so that they all join into one line. Now if you can't do this with your fingers, use a pair of pliers to wrap the bottom very tightly. And then I'm going to take the other two strands, and we're going to be doing this in the shape of a triangle. So I'm going to have one on one corner, one on the other, and one which is going to be the point. Once I have all three of them tightly wrapped around the base of the jar, I'm going to twist those strands into one. Once I've got the height that I want for the baby Groot, I'm going to take those and I'm going to separate them so that they're pointing in three different directions, one up and one on each side. For the two wires that are going to be the arms, you want to bend them into the shape that you're going to have the arms in, fold it over each other, wrap that around, and then it's going to go back down the first wire. At the very bottom, with whatever's left of that wire, you want to keep it as close to the first strand as possible. Again, use your fingers or a pair of pliers. And then I'm going to do exactly the same to the other arm. Now for the top wire, which is going to be the head, I'm going to cut that short a little bit. Then with whatever's left, I'm going to slide that down the base of the first wire, cut it down to size again, and this is what's going to be holding the head in place. For the head, I'm going to be using clay which is very, very light. You could use a regular clay if you want, but bear in mind that anything which is going to be holding this up is going to need to be a little bit tougher than if you use a lighter clay. So I'm going to be moulding it into the shape of, you need to think of it like an egg. And I'm going to soften out the surface with a little bit of water. You can use your fingers or a brush if that's what you prefer. And then I'm going to be using a nail dotting tool. If you don't have a nail dotting tool though, you can use the edge of your finger, the end of a brush. You can even use a cocktail stick if that's what you have to hand. I'm going to blend out the shape for the eyes, and you just want to have two little hollows, a little smile for the mouth, and then just slowly work that so that there's more of a rise where the nose is, and it's just going to be a small amount, but it makes a difference if you have these little rises and falls. It makes it look a little more like Groot. Now for his little pieces of hair, what I'm going to be doing is taking a glue stick, and I have a glue stick which already comes in the shade of brown. If you don't have this and you just have a normal clear glue stick, then you're going to have to paint these later on. Now for the hair, once I've done this and I've put it on the mat, I'm just going to peel it off the mat and stick it into the head before I'm going to be adding a little bit more texture on his face. And to do this, I'm just going to be using a sculpting tool, but again, you can use something like a cocktail stick, or you can even use the edge of a fork as well. Now that I've added those textures, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do more of those little hair pieces. If you don't have something like the mat that I'm using, you can use a plate. So just take your glue gun and you're going to do a little line onto the plate. And then for the eye, it's the same idea. You just want to do a little blob, wait for it to dry, take it off, and then you're going to use that for the eyes. As for the body, that's very simple. First thing I'm going to do is just pop the head on the end of those wires. And then I'm going to take that glue gun and I'm just going to start layering like crazy. And you want to make sure that these bits stick out quite a lot. The back of the head I am going to join to the rest of the body just to make sure that this thing can't wobble off. And then I'm just going to keep on layering and layering. And as you can see, he's a little skinny for the moment. We need to fatten him up. And I'm going to keep layering him up until he's like this, and the bottom of that jar is completely covered and you can't see the wires at all. Now we're going to start painting the face so that it blends in with the body a little more. I'm going to be using a watercolour at first, but you could go ahead and use an acrylic like what I'll be doing later on. And for the moment I just want to lay that colour on so that I've got a rough idea of how much darker I need the acrylic to go. I'm also going to fill in those gaps in between his twig hair. Then afterwards I'm going to be taking an acrylic, and this is a much darker colour than the watercolour I've used originally, but I'm going to be using that around the edge of his face, around his eyes, and then along his mouth. To make the rest of his body look a little more interesting, I'm going to be taking a light brown nail varnish, and I'm going to be applying this on all the raised areas. So you're going to use the edge of the brush and then just go over this. If you want to, you could also use an enamel paint, but I wanted to use a nail varnish because I figured that's something most people are going to be able to find quite easily. So this is what he looks like now that he's painted. And now I'm going to make his eyes a really nice little beady black. before I'm going to be taking some regular stones, and these are the kind of stones that you'll have for potpourri and any other kind of decoration in a jar, essentially. I'm going to take silicone glue, pop some of this in between the roots, and then I'm going to either apply fake moss or those stones that you just saw me use. So I'm just going to tuck those into the gaps where I've already put the glue, and I'm going to keep doing this all around the base. Finally, I'm just going to spray it with a clear gloss, clean the bottom, and then that's it. That's my baby Groot jar.